Here's one thing we've seen with Oregon. We've seen really good regular seasons, dominant regular seasons. 2 years ago, they're the best team in the country. They beat Ohio State. Who'd they lose to? They lost to Ohio State when they played them again. Who did they lose to last year, guys? 2 losses. Indiana. They have 3 losses the last 2 years. All 3 losses were to the national champions. They ain't losing to bums, guys. So can they break that postseason? Can it not just be about the regular season?
January 9th, 2026, Atlanta, Georgia, the Peach Bowl, college football playoff semifinal. Oregon walks onto the field with a 13-1 record, the #1 overall seed, and a quarterback who could have been a first-round NFL pick. And then Indiana runs them off the field. That was the second year in a row. In 2024, Ohio State blew them out in the playoff. In 2025, Indiana did the exact same thing. 2 consecutive playoff appearances, 2 blowout losses by a combined 54 points. And both times, the team that beat Oregon went on to win the national championship. Most programs lose their quarterback after a season like that. Dante Moore was projected as a first-round pick. He could have walked away and cashed in. Instead, he came back. And just like that, everything changed.
We have some breaking news. Dante Moore will be headed back to Oregon.
Wow.
For another year. He was projected to potentially be the #2 overall pick.
If you are an Oregon fan watching this, drop a comment right now and tell us, is 2026 finally the year? And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. You do not want to miss what is coming. Because here is what nobody is talking about loudly enough. Oregon enters 2026 as maybe the most complete roster in the entire country.
Oregon has the best roster in the country. I think that every single position group you can make the argument is top 5 or at least top 10 with receiver, running back, tight end, front 7, secondary, and also quarterback. The only position group that you can't make that argument for is offensive line.
Not because of what they were last year, because of who decided to come back.
How in the world could you not put the defending national champions at the top of the Big Ten when all they did was reload and the roster could be better than it was a year ago?
And the story of how they built this team is one of the most compelling in the entire sport. Let's go back to 2025 first, because the context matters. Oregon went 13-2. They won the Big Ten. They earned the #1 overall seed in the college football playoff. Dante Moore threw for 3,565 yards, 30 touchdowns, and completed 71.8% of his passes. He won Orange Bowl Offensive MVP after Oregon shut out Texas Tech in the quarterfinals. This was one of the best teams in the country by almost every measure. Dan Lanning had built Oregon into a machine that recruited at an elite level, won games at an elite level, and reloaded every single offseason. But there was one problem. And it was the biggest problem there is. When the lights were brightest, Oregon disappeared. 2 straight years, 2 playoff blowouts, 54 combined points of margin. The Ducks played beautiful football for 11 months and then collapsed in the exact moment that defines a season. Dan Lanning knew it. The whole program knew it. And that is the weight this team carries into 2026. So here you are, a program that has done everything except the one thing that matters most. A fan base that has watched Michigan, Ohio State, and Indiana win national championships out of the Big Ten in 3 straight years, while Oregon keeps knocking on the door and getting sent home. The question was never whether Oregon could get to the playoff. The question was whether they could ever finish. Dante Moore is back, and that single sentence is more important than anything else about this roster.
Dante Moore's got a shot to do some really special stuff this year. Could have probably been a first-round pick last year, but he's back. Had 72% completion percentage last year, 30 touchdowns.
He completed 296 of 412 passes last season, 71.8%, 3,565 yards, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He led Oregon to 13 wins and was the Orange Bowl Offensive MVP. He was, before he decided to return, among the top prospects in the 2026 NFL Draft, and he chose to come back to Eugene instead. Phil Steele said it directly. This is Dan Lanning's best team in his 5 years. Moore could have been a first-round pick and opted to return, and the Ducks have a top 2 defensive line and a top 8 offensive line in the country wrapped around him. That is not a rebuilding team. That is a team that looked at 2 straight playoff losses and decided to run it back with the guy who could have left, specifically to finish the job. Now, there is a complication, and Oregon fans need to pay attention to it. Dan Lanning brought in new coordinators on both sides of the ball for 2026. That means new systems, new terminology, and the very real possibility of early growing pains this fall.
What's new are the coordinators. Drew Mehringer takes over for Will Stein, who's now the head coach at Kentucky, and Chris Hampton, their secondary coach, takes over for Tosh Lupoy, who's now at Cal. Those guys stepping into those roles, everybody thinks that's seamless. until you've done it.
When you change how an offense and a defense operate at the same time, September can get bumpy, even with elite talent. But here is the counter-argument. The talent returning is so significant that the schemes have a foundation most programs never get to build on. You are not teaching a new system to a bunch of freshmen. You are teaching it to a veteran roster that has already played in back-to-back college football playoffs. That is a completely different situation. Now let's talk about what actually returns, because this is where Oregon fans need to pay close attention. Around Moore, Oregon has built one of the most complete offensive rosters in the sport. The running back room is the Thunder and Lightning duo of Jordan Davison and De'Air Hill Jr., who combined for 1,323 rushing yards as freshman backups last season. Now they are the feature backs. Think about that. 1,300 yards from two guys who were the backups. Now they are the starters, a year older and a year stronger. At receiver, Decorian Moore returns as a rising star, and Evan Stewart is back, after being one of the most explosive weapons in the conference. Jeremiah McClellan steps into a bigger role. The offensive line returns Iapani Pancho Lalulu, an anchor at center and one of the best interior linemen in the country. Phil Steele ranked this offensive line 8th nationally.
Offensive line churn. If there's something you see from 50,000 feet about this Oregon team that you think could be a hiccup, it would probably be O-line. This is the second straight year they lose 3+ starters on the offensive line.
Combine an elite line, a Thunder and Lightning backfield, a deep receiver room, and a 71% completion quarterback, and you have an offense that can beat anyone in the country when it is clicking. On defense, the story is even more impressive, because this is the part that separates this Oregon team from every other Lanning team. The entire starting defensive line came back. All 4 defensive linemen returned. Oregon did not lose a single starter to the transfer portal, which is almost unheard of for a program at this level. Phil Steele ranked this defensive line as the number 2 unit in the entire country.
Defensive line could be / should be nasty this year. All 4 starters return. And frankly, that's not a headline I thought I'd be reading. I thought I'd be talking about attrition.
Amari Washington anchors the interior. And then Dan Lanning went into the portal and added Coy Parrish, a safety and returner from Minnesota who is one of the most dangerous players in the country in the back end. Sophomore cornerback Brandon Finney Jr. is a rising star. Oregon returns 8 defensive starters. That is not a defense that needs to be rebuilt. That is a defense that just needs to execute a new system with players who have already proven they belong. And this schedule is something else entirely. Oregon opens September 5th against Boise State at Autzen Stadium. Boise State is the most credible group of 6 playoff candidate in the country, so this is not a warm-up. This is a real test in week 1. Then the Big Ten schedule arrives, and it is brutal. Oregon has to navigate a conference that has produced the last 3 national champions. One of the biggest games on the schedule is a Michigan team that just hired Kyle Whittingham and is trending upward fast, along with Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country. Autzen Stadium at night is one of the most difficult environments in the sport. Oregon has beaten elite teams there for years. If the Ducks can protect home field and steal the road games that matter, they control their own playoff destiny heading into November.
You lose that one, and suddenly your playoff fate may very well hinge on your ability to go on the road and win at Columbus against Ohio State. Certainly, you'd have to win every other game outside of that. 9-3 is not getting you into the college football playoff.
But we cannot pretend the doubt does not exist, because it is the entire story. Oregon has lost its last 2 playoff games by a combined 54 points, both times against eventual national champions. That is a pattern, not an accident. The Ducks have recruited too well, spent too much, and won too many regular season games to keep exiting the playoff in blowouts. The talent has never been the question for Dan Lanning. Oregon reaches the playoff. Oregon wins regular season games. The question is whether this program can win 3 or 4 consecutive games against elite competition in January, when the margin for error disappears and one bad half ends the season. 2 years in a row, they could not. And until they prove they can, that doubt follows them into every single big game.
Can they peak in the playoff? Can they peak at the right times? They've had no problem, looking incredible at points during regular seasons, only for it to end with a thud a couple of times last 2 years.
Anything less than a playoff appearance in 2026 is a failure. Anything short of the semifinals is a disappointment. Those are the expectations now, and they are completely fair. Dan Lanning stood at Big Ten Media Days and did not sugarcoat any of it. He said Oregon has played as good a football as anybody in the last few years, outside of the teams that won the national championship. He said they are close. He said, let's go attack 2026. New season, new team, let's see if we can become the best version of us. The quarterback came back when he could have been a first-round pick. The entire defensive line returned. The Thunder and Lightning backfield is a year older. The receiver room is loaded. 8 defensive starters are back. Phil Steele calls it the best team of Lanning's tenure. ESPN lists Oregon as a national championship contender. Every major preseason model ranks them in the top 3 in the country. The talent is there. The excuses are gone. The Dan Lanning built a program that recruits like the best in the sport and wins like the best in the sport. And now there is exactly one thing left to do that Oregon has never done in its entire history: win a national championship. The man has taken this program further every single year he has been there. Playoff quarterfinals, playoff semifinals. There is only one round left, and the NCAA has a serious Oregon Ducks problem.